Hi, we are Educando presenters and we are here today to share about cognitive development.
What is cognitive development?
But to discover cognitive development.
I think it's Jean Piaget, but much better to ask Trixie.
Yes, you're right. Jean Piaget, the Swiss psychologist, the researcher of children's cognitive development. Let's dig deeper about Jean Piaget's background.
Jean William Fritz Piaget was a Swiss psychologist known for his work on child development. Piaget's theory of cognitive development and epistemological view are together called genetic epistemology. Piaget placed great importance on the education of children. As the director of International Bureau of Education, he declared in 1934 that only education is capable of saving our societies from possible collapse, whether violent or gradual. His theory of child development is studied in pre-service education programs. Educators continue to incorporate constructivist-based strategies.
Now, we already know about Jean Piaget.
Therefore, let's move on to cognitive development of Piaget's research about.
What really is cognitive development?
That's really a cool question, Janar. Now, let's see what really is a cognitive development.
To Piaget, cognitive development was a progressive reorganization of mental processes as a result of biological maturation and environmental experience. Children construct an understanding of the world around them, then experience discrepancies between what they already know and what they discover in their environment.
Now my question are answered. Thanks, Trix.
I heard there are three structures of cognitive development.
Yes, indeed. There are three structures. But what are those?
Curiosity really hits hard, but for you guys, these are the answers.
We can think of a schema as a mental framework in the form of a kid's toy. Things we already fully understand, say a triangle, get into our brain without a problem. When new information is similar to what we know, say a square, it can enter the brain through assimilation. For completely new information, here a star, this doesn't work. Then we need accommodation and to change the schema itself. Assimilation is the cognitive process of making new information fit in with your existing understanding of the world. It works if new information is close to what we already know. To process the new information, we make it fit into our existing schemas.
Equilibration. Equilibration is achieving proper balance between assimilation and accommodation. When our experiences do not match our schemata or schema, cognitive structures, we experience cognitive disequilibrium. This means there is a discrepancy between that what is perceived and what is understood. One then exert effort through assimilation and accommodation to establish equilibrium.
Finally, we already know about the three structures of cognitive development. Now, let's move on to the stages.
Stages? There's more?
Yes, there's more. Let's dig deeper about those stages.
Piaget's theory argues that we have to conquer 4 stages of cognitive development. First, the sensory motor stage. Second, the pre-operational stage. Third, the concrete operational stage. And fourth, the formal operational stage. Only once we have gone through all the stages, at what age can vary, we are able to reach full human intelligence.
The first stage corresponds for infancy. This is the stage when a child who is initially reflective in grasping, sucking, and reaching becomes more organized in his movement and activity. The term sensory motor focuses on the prominence of the senses and muscle movement through which the infant comes to learn about him and the world. Object permanence. This is the ability of the child to know and the object still exists even when out of sight. This ability is attained in the sensory motor stage.
1. The sensory motor stage, ages birth to 2. In the sensory motor stage, we develop through experiences and movement our 5 senses. Our brain wants to see, hear, smell, taste and touch as much as possible. First, we start with simple reflexes, and soon after we develop our first habits. From 4 months old, we become aware of things beyond our own body, and then as we get older, we learn to do things intentionally. A key milestone is the development of working memory, or in Piaget terms, our realization of object permanence. Before that, our mum can show and then hide a teddy, and we would think it's gone. After, we understand that objects continue to exist even when we can't see them. We start becoming curious about everything. We want to smell flowers, taste food, listen to sounds, and talk to strangers. To explore more, we move. We learn to sit, crawl, stand, walk, and even to run. This increased physical mobility consequently leads to increased cognitive development. But we remain egocentric, meaning we can perceive the world only from our own point of view.
Stage 2, Pre-operational stage. The pre-operational stage covers from about 2 to 7 years old, roughly corresponding to the preschool years. Intelligence at this stage is intuitive in nature. At this stage, the child can now make mental representation and is able to pretend the child is now ever closer to the use of symbols.
2. The pre-operational stage, ages 2 to 7. Our thinking is mainly categorized through symbolic functions and intuitive thoughts. We have lots of fantasies and believe objects are alive. As we are not able to apply specific cognitive operations, Piaget calls this stage pre-operational. We learn to speak and understand that words, images, and gestures are symbols for something else. When we draw our family, we are not concerned about drawing each person to scale, but rather with their symbolic meanings. We love to play pretend, which allows us to experience something new and learn a lot. At around age 4, most of us become very curious and ask many questions. We want to know everything. We can call it the birth of primitive reasoning. Piaget calls it the intuitive age, because while we realize that we have a vast amount of knowledge, we have no idea how we acquired it. Our thinking in this stage is still pretty egocentric. We think others see the world like we do, and still don't understand that they see it differently.
Stage 3, Concrete operational stage. This stage is characterized by the ability of the child to think logically, but only in terms of concrete objects. This covers approximately the ages between 8 to 11 years or the elementary school years.
3. The concrete operational stage, ages 7 to 11. We finally discover logic and we develop concrete cognitive operations, such as sorting objects in a certain order. One example of this is inductive reasoning, which means that if we see someone eating a cookie, we can draw a conclusion and then make a generalization. And we now get the concept of conservation. We understand that if we pour orange juice from a normal glass to a taller one, the amount stays the same. Our younger sister will pick the taller glass, thinking she gets more. By the same logic, we only now can understand that if 3 plus 5 equals 8, then 8 minus 3 must equal 5. Our brain learns to rearrange our thoughts, to classify and build concrete operational mental structures. For example, we now know that we can reverse an action by doing the opposite. Excited by our new mental abilities, we apply them in conversations, activities, when we learn to write, and in school. As a result, we get to know ourselves better. We begin to understand that our thoughts and feelings are unique and not necessarily those of others. That means that we learn to put ourselves in someone else's shoes.
Stage 4. Formal Operational Stage. In the final stage of formal operations covering ages between 12 and 15 years, thinking becomes more logical. They can now solve in general ideas or specific problems and can educated guess.
4. The formal operational stage, age 12 plus. Once we become teenagers, we become formally operational. We now have the ability to think more rationally about abstract concepts and hypothetical events. Our advanced cognitive abilities allow us to understand abstract concepts such as success and failure, love and hate. We form a deeper understanding of our own identity and our morality. We now also think that we understand why people behave the way they behave, and as a result, can become more compassionate. Our brain can now do deductive reasoning, which means we can compare two statements and reach a logical generalization. Our new mental skills allow us to plan our life systematically and prioritize, and we can make assumptions about events that have no necessary relation to reality. We can now also philosophize and just think about thinking itself. Our new sense for our identity now also creates egocentric thoughts, and some start to see an imaginary audience watching them all the time. Piaget believed in lifelong learning, but insisted that the formal operational stage is the final stage of our cognitive development. Jean Piaget's first interests were animals, and he published his first scientific paper on albino sparrows in 1907, when he was just 11 years old. In 1920, he began working with standardized intelligence tests. He realized that younger children consistently make types of mistakes that older children do not. He concluded that they must think differently and spent the rest of his life studying the intellectual development of children.